Assalamualaikum, I'm Farishta Kabir and today we are going to discuss about LSTM working procedure and why is it efficient in sequence modeling. To begin with, what is LSTM? Long short-term memory or LSTM is an artificial recurrent neural network or RNN architecture used in the field of deep learning. Unlike standard feed-forward neural networks, LSTM has feedback connections. It can not only process single data points such as images, but also entire sequences of data such as speech or video. To understand LSTM better, we have to get our hands around RNN or recurrent neural networks. Recurrent neural networks or RNN are designed to work with sequential data. Sequential data can be time series, can be in the form of text, audio, video, etc. Rnn uses the previous information in the sequence to produce the current output. To understand this better, I'm going to give you an example. My mother is the best mother. For this sentence, at the time t0, the first step is to feed the word my into the network. The Rnn produces an output. At the time t1, then at the next step, we feed the word mother and the activation value from the previous step. Now the RNN has information about both words, my and mother. Let's look at the architecture of the Rnn unit. It takes input from the previous step and current input. Here, 10H is the activation function. Instead of 10H, we can use any other activation functions as well. But there are some major disadvantages in Rnn, such as vanishing and exploding gradient. In Rnn, to train the network, we have to backpropagate through time. At each step, the gradient is calculated. The gradient is used to update weights in the network. If the effect of the previous layer on the current layer is small, then the gradient value will be small and vice versa. If the gradient of the previous layer is smaller, then the gradient of the current layer will be even smaller. This makes the gradient exponentially shrink down as we backpropagate. Smaller gradient means it will not affect the weight updation. Due to this, the network does not learn the effect of earlier inputs, thus causing the short-term memory problems. So basically, the main problem in Rnn is it's too difficult for Rnn to learn to preserve information over many time steps. In vanilla Rnn, the hidden state is constantly being rewritten. So what can be the solution to this? To overcome this problem, two specialized versions of Rnn were created. They are GRU or Graded Recurrent Unit and LSTM or Long Short-Term Memory. So what is LSTM? LSTM or Long Short-Term Memory is an artificial recurrent neural network used in the field of deep learning, as we have discussed earlier. In LSTM, gates were introduced first. It has better ability to update data and also the ability to forget data according to its needs. Different types of LSTMs are vanilla or the classic LSTM, people LSTM, bidirectional LSTM, and fuzzy LSTM, etc. To understand LSTM first, you have to understand this example. Suppose there are two sentences. Sentence 1 is my cat she was ill. The second one is the cats they were ill. In the dash part, there are many other sentences or paragraphs that creates a long distance between the two parts of the sentences. So here, at the ending of the sentence, if we need to predict the word was or were, the network has to remember the starting word cat or cats. So LSTMs and GRUs make use of memory cell to store the activation value of previous words in the long sequences. Now, the concept of gates. Gates are used for controlling the flow of information in the network. Gates are capable of learning which inputs in the sequence are important and store that information in the memory unit. They can pass the information in long sequences and use them to make predictions. A common LSTM unit is composed of a cell, an input gate, a forget gate, and an output gate. The cell remembers the values over arbitrary time intervals, and the three gates regulate the flow of information into and out of the cell. Gates also contain sigmoid activations. A sigmoid activation is similar to the 10H activation in Rnn. Instead of squishing values between -1 and 1, it squishes values between 0 and 1. That is helpful to update or forget data because any number getting multiplied by 0 is 0, causing values to disappear or be forgotten. Now let's know more about the gates. To update the cell state, we have the input gate. First, we pass the previous hidden state and current input into this sigmoid function. That decides which values will be updated by transforming the values to be between 0 and 1. 0 means not important, 1 means important. Then comes the forget gate. This gate decides what information should be thrown away or kept. Information from the previous hidden state and information from the current input is passed through this sigmoid function. Values come out between 0 and 1. The closer to 0 means to forget, and the closer to 1 means to keep. Then comes the cell state. Now we should have enough information to calculate the cell state. First, the cell state gets pointwise multiplied by the forget vector. This has a possibility of dropping values in the cell state if it gets multiplied by values near 0. Then we take the output from the input gate and do a pointwise addition, which updates the cell state to a new values that the neural network finds relevant. This gives us our new cell state. Lastly, we have the output gate. The output gate decides what the next hidden state should be. Remember that the hidden state contains information on previous inputs. The hidden state is also used for predictions. Now that we know about the architecture of LSTM, let's look at the mechanism of LSTM. So basically, the input gate inputs data, the forget gate decides which data to pass and which to forget. The cell state modifies the data, and ultimately the output gate passes the combined output. And this whole thing is repeated throughout multiple cells to build a solid LSTM network. Here is bidirectional LSTM, which are like an upgrade over the vanilla LSTM. In bidirectional LSTMs, each training sequence is presented forward and backward so as to separate recurrent nets. Both sequences are connected to the same output layer. Bidirectional LSTMs have complete information about every point in a given sequence, everything before and after it. Now the question comes, in terms of Rnn versus Lstm, which one is better? Well, the answer is it depends. Whereas Lstm is more connected in longer gaps, can modify data according to its needs, and has a solid temporary long-term memory, Rnn is less complex. Now here are some applications of LSTM. LSTM is applicable to tasks such as unsegmented connected handwriting recognition, speech recognition, and anomaly detection in network traffic or IDS, which means intrusion detection system. So basically it can be said that LSTM is ideal for sequence modeling and predicting results in longer sequence datasets, as it reduces the vanishing gradient problem and it is more connected in terms of longer gaps. However, here comes GRU to beat LSTM with a few perks in some situations. The key difference between GRU and LSTM is that GRU has 2 gates, which are reset and update, while LSTM has 3. And GRU is less complex than LSTM because it has less number of gates. Also, GRU exposes the complete memory and hidden layers, but LSTM doesn't. So it can be counted as a substitute of LSTM in some. However, according to some past theories, LSTMs remember longer sequences than GRUs and outperform them in tasks requiring modeling long-distance relations. So it can be considered as an ideal approach for sequence modeling in terms of larger datasets. So this was all for today. in terms of the efficiency of LSTM in terms of sequence modeling. Thank you so much.